This was my very first video game themed magazine. Everybody remembers their first. And mine just so happened to be the Tips and Tricks Codebook 2006 video. I messed up how that's, whatever. Who cares what this thing is called? I remember walking through a Rite Aid when I was 9. And while my parents were doing their thing, buying their prescription drugs, I was perusing other aisles at that Rite Aid. And Rite Aid is kind of like the, the D-tier wonderland for kids. There's some stuff to look at. Fair amount of fairly cool aisles filled with like snacks, some toys, some video games. They'll have, like Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings. Then last time I went to a Rite Aid, they still had that, so, that great. But what I was generally attracted to was the magazine section. As a kid, magazines were kind of my go-to book on the go. If it was going to be a long road trip, I'd bring 2 to 3 magazines or something and just, peruse them. Just stop on a page that caught my eye. And then on subsequent readings, then I'd actually stop and read most of the pages, or I'd just look at the ads, or I'd just do anything in them. I don't know. There's always so much to do in magazines. And when I saw this one, it caught my eye, mainly because Sonic the Hedgehog. This artwork is from Sonic Mega Collection on the GameCube. I owned that game. So it was just mere destiny. And on top of that, we have also inside SpongeBob SquarePants. I owned nothing but SpongeBob games. I just think it's so interesting how SpongeBob was kind of seen as a bit of a major video game franchise back in the day. I mean, there was a yearly SpongeBob game, and pretty much most of the SpongeBob games got like Player's Choice Greatest Hits labels on GameCube, PS2, original Xbox. I mean, when Nintendo was showcasing the Wii at E3 2006, they made like a big deal about SpongeBob Creature from the Krusty Krab coming to the platform. Hell, behind closed doors, they like went up to THQ and was like, please put SpongeBob on the Wii. It was a big deal back then. This was a genuine video game franchise. But then I also noticed all the platforms at top. Hey, I had a GameCube, I had a Game Boy. It's just interesting to look back at this era in 2006 when these were the major platforms out, and in addition they were still kind of considering PlayStation and N64 kind of modern enough to warrant putting on this header. Just pretty wild. I mean, like, the N64 was pretty much done for the past 5 years, but hey, whatever. This was just something I wanted at the time. It was only $6.99, $7. Why not? So this was the first video game themed magazine I owned, and this is still the exact one I owned from back in the day. Still fairly well kept together. Haven't really looked at it in a couple of years. I think the last time I looked at it was the Cheat Codes episode of Scott the Woz, which was all the way back in 2018. So hey, why not? Let's see what my very first video game magazine entailed. So this was celebrating Sonic's 15th anniversary, 2006. There was a fair amount of Sonic games in 2006, 4 to be exact. None of which were any good. You had Sonic Riders, Sonic Rivals on the PSP, and then Sonic 06 and Sonic Genesis on the Game Boy Advance. I think probably the best one out of that bunch was probably Sonic Riders, and I don't really like Sonic Riders. And then there was Sonic Rivals, which was Sonic Rivals. It's fine. And then you had Sonic 06 and Sonic Genesis. Enough said about that. When we move over to the table of contents, we can see, this is full-blown Sonic style, man. After 15 years of Sonic the Hedgehog video games, there are a couple of questions that you might ask yourself. Yeah, like why? First, do you remember the first time you played a Sonic game? We do. It was back in 1991, and as far as we were concerned, the original Sonic the Hedgehog was far more than just a Sega Genesis cartridge. It was like a window to another world, and like most true video gamers, we're grateful to Sega for keeping that window wide open for so long. What? Another question that cropped up while we were working on this issue's Sonic Cheat Code retrospective: how many bad Sonic games are there? What? So the bad Sonic game debate has been alive even before Sonic 06 came out. Keep in mind, this magazine came out before Sonic 06. That's strange. I don't really feel like there was like a ton of stinkers up to this point. We had Shadow the Hedgehog, and just random little offshoots like some of the Game Gear games and like Sonic Shuffle. But for the most part, I mean, like, I feel like most Sonic games were fairly well received. Sonic Heroes got kind of like mixed reception, but I think the general consensus was it's still a quality game. But then it continues, in our opinion, hardly any at all. The series has had a surprisingly consistent batting average, especially when you consider the fact that we've gone through several new generations of video game hardware since Sonic first appeared. Why the hell are you asking that then? They have 3 questions they ask in this introduction. Do you remember the first time you played a Sonic game? Are there any bad Sonic games? What does the future hold for our Hedgehog hero? I feel like if this was Mario and you had 3 questions, one of them wouldn't be how many bad Mario games are there. So it's really strange to me that before like the big game to really push the Sonic is bad narrative, and, you know, and justifiably so, because, you know, Sonic 06 isn't very good, but still, it's just very strange to me that that's, like, one of the only questions that they're asking in this introduction, yet, they say there's barely any bad Sonic games, and Sonic 06 hadn't come out yet. Weird. Sega has offered the press a few tantalizing glimpses of its next-generation Sonic game, which is currently in development for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. If you keep an eye on our monthly Tips and Tricks magazine, you can expect to hear a lot more about this new game as details become available. We can't wait to get our hands on it. Tragic. I love this kind of junk, man. I love looking back at, like, these old video game things and seeing what the opinions were back during a specific era, like a specific month before certain things get announced or certain things release. I love listening to like old podcasts from like 2011 and whatnot, just looking back at like what the general consensus was about certain games coming out, trailers that just released, press releases, all that stuff. You know, like still kind of like my comfort food is listening to like an old IGN podcast from 2012 or something, you know? So this is awesome. Unfortunately, that's kind of basically the only time we get something from this magazine. It would probably make more sense back in the day for me to have like the actual Tips and Tricks magazine as they were talking about here, because it sounds like the actual Tips and Tricks magazine had more so like stuff to read, while this, it is just a code book. It's pretty much just, here's a bunch of cheat codes. And keep in mind, my childhood game collection was pretty much this and then 99% that. But thankfully, that's most of this cover, so I think I'm in the clear. I have the Beautiful Joe TV show, which, you know, I forgot was even a thing. You know, advertising the DVD set and also the UMD for PSP, which was badass back in the day. I thought UMD videos on PSP were incredible. It was like, wow, you get like a portable DVD player like in the palm of your hands. That's insane. But we're not here to gawk at that. We're here to gawk at Sonic the Hedgehog cheat codes. So the entire like first couple pages here are completely dedicated to a fair amount of Sonic games, and they go over a decent amount of these, pretty much most of the major ones, so they have some interesting variations. So, you know, we have Sonic 1, you know, fair enough, Sonic 2, and then we have Sonic 2 Game Gear, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine for Game Gear, Sonic CD, and then we move over to Sonic Spinball Genesis, Spinball on the Game Gear, Sonic Chaos on Game Gear, Sonic 3, Triple Trouble, Knuckles. So, you know, it goes over a fair amount, but not everything. Now, I don't know off the top of my head if, like, say, Sonic 1 on the Game Gear had any cheat codes to input, so, you know, it's fair that they might not include that. The same goes for, like, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine on Genesis. They only show the Game Gear one here, but still, definitely a little interesting. I think it would be cool if they kind of had a bit more of a retrospective kind of thing, but I definitely remember kind of looking through all of these and just liking the box art, just really liking just looking back at all this box art, kind of like a very rough retrospective of the Sonic series. And a lot of these games I had access to because it also says like, here's Sonic 3 from the Genesis, but you can also play it in Sonic Mega Collection and Mega Collection Plus. And I remember trying a few of these here. Definitely like look at the Sonic 3, the stage select code, impossible to do. You have to quickly press up, up, down, down, up, 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 You'll hear a chime to confirm the code. Note, this is a very difficult code to enter. You must press the buttons at a consistent speed. Yeah, that code is damn near impossible to do. Mark my words, you will be spending roughly 30 minutes inputting that code because it's on the title screen right when like Sonic flashes towards you. You have to input this entire thing, and there are certain frames where your input will not matter. So good luck. But yeah, a lot of these are just talking about like debug mode. That's a classic kind of cheat code in the original Sonic games. And you know, we also have basic just tips on how to unlock things like the bonus games in Sonic Mega Collection, which are stupid to unlock. I mean, all you have to do is just open these games like 20 times each, but it takes a second to do that. Even if you play through, say, like Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and Sonic Spinball in their entirety, you beat the games, you still might not have opened them up 20 times each. And you have to open Sonic 2 and Sonic Spinball 20 times each to unlock Knuckles and Sonic 2. The shit is insane here. You might as well just kind of cheese it by just, you know, opening up the game, going back, opening up, going back, like nonstop. Like, you're not gonna really do this naturally in the game. It's crazy. But I really always like this page. There's so many random Sonic games, specifically ones you're like, what the hell is it? Sonic Jam on the Gamecom? Have you ever seen Sonic Jam on the Gamecom? Don't. Then we move towards a more modern era of Sonic, you know, Sonic Adventure DX, which they only have Adventure DX on here. No, they have actually Sonic Adventure, the original. No Sonic Adventure 2, though, at all. I'm not seeing it here. But yeah, Sonic Heroes, Battle, Gems Collection, which a ton of stuff, which this is mostly just telling you how to unlock a lot of the extras. Sonic Rush and Sonic Riders, because keep in mind, that was the latest Sonic game that was out. And that's it for their Sonic the Hedgehog retrospective. It's pretty much just going over most of the main games throughout the years. Pretty crazy to look back. You know, this was the 15th anniversary. By the 15th anniversary, you know, this was the latest Sonic game that was out. Pretty crazy. But yeah, I tried a couple of these cheat codes in the games I owned, but at the end of the day, I kind of like just looking through this for the pretty pictures of the box art. Which is kind of cool to kind of like, I don't know, like as a kid, I knew I could kind of just like stare at a couple of these things and just kind of try to find new details I didn't see before. Kind of like magic eye pictures, I guess. Just being like, oh man, you know, I'll stare at Triple Trouble for 30 seconds. That'll be fun. But yeah, definitely a lot of memories going through this. And a lot of memories of this section, but not really knowing what the hell I was reading. The PS2 section is by far the biggest. I mean, look, I just grabbed a jumble of pages here, and it's still on PS2. I just entered Xbox 360 here. Like, we're up to page 33, and that's where PS2 ends. So PS2 is a huge chunk of this section, and justifiably so. You know, it was the most popular console at the time. And I remember just kind of looking through this and kind of just like imagining what a lot of these games were. I didn't know what any of these games were. Some of them at least had like box art images. A few of them had screenshots and whatnot, but not a ton. They definitely wanted to jam as much possible into these books as they could have. So they were pretty crabby with the amount of space they were willing to give up, you know, not a ton. So a lot of this is just a jumble of words and symbols. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas pretty much takes up an entire page. I mean, that's fair. It was a fairly new game at the time, and that released in 2004. And a big part of the PS2 GTAs is dicking around with cheat codes, so I understand. But yeah, this was kind of how I saw what the other side of the console sphere was doing at the time, or at the very least, like all the other games that were possibly out there. Because I was still a little envious of people that owned a PS2. I could tell there was so many more games available on it. And the fact is, you know, you could play DVDs on it. That was cool. And this magazine definitely let me know how envious I was because of just look at how many games are available here. It's absolutely insane. But it didn't make me envious of the Xbox 360. Want to see how many pages this was? That's it. Yeah, the Xbox 360 was about probably less than a year old at this point. This magazine probably came out like springtime of 2006 maybe. And Xbox 360 launched in like what, like the holiday season of 2005. So yeah, like the only games that they had codes for here We're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 games. Is that really worth advertising on the front of the cover here? Definitely a fun era for the 360. Kind of that early few years. The Xbox 360 was just such a cool feeling console, and then it just kind of it just wasn't the same by the end of its life. It wasn't really the go-to console anymore, at least when it came to like exclusives and just overall vibes, because that was when they were starting to really push Kinect. They're really just starting to push it as like a media device, and the amount of exclusives that they had really just whittled down to you know, the classic for Microsoft: Halo, Gears of War, and Forza. But that early era, like, man, like I remember going to friends' houses and just seeing like an Xbox 360 in like their basement media center, and just thinking like, man, that just looks like a cool system. It just looks like a cozy system where it's just like, man, that is your go-to thing right here. Just a damn cool device. But at this time, barely had much out for it. In comparison, Kingdom Hearts 2 is coming out soon. Can you spot the difference? They're cheeky, aren't they? If that's the only difference, I think as a kid that this pissed me off. I wanted more to do with this magazine. It was $7. I got this magazine. It was full of like 99% codes I couldn't use. I was like, oh, thank God, something to do here. Oh, you son of a bitch. Original Xbox, not nearly as big as PS2, but still a decent amount here. Still fun to kind of thumb through. I really liked how they had the colors on the side here, so you can kind of look at the edges of the page and kind of know where your go-to console was. And speak of the devil, here it is, the GameCube. Telling you right now, outside of the Sonic Mega Collection cheat codes, I was all about the let me find some games I owned here. Okay, do I see Cars the video game? No Cars the video game. Any of the Fairly Odd Parents games? No. Aha! Battle for Bikini Bottom, the SpongeBob games. All right, cheat codes. Pause the game, then hold L+R and enter the following codes. Note that the codes must be entered very quickly. If done correctly, you will hear SpongeBob say something or the controller will vibrate. I don't think I ever accomplished this correctly. I always wanted to. I mean, look at this. Max health, add 1,000 shiny objects, add 10 spatulas, instant bubble bowl power up. My God, and all we had to do were multiple combinations of X and Y. But because they said you had to enter this quickly, I was never great at a lot of this kind of stuff, you know, entering specific codes, not playing by the rules. I was not good at any of this, believe me. When it comes to like cheat codes, hacking things, like I tried to hack like Smash Brothers Brawl, play Project M. I f***ed up somehow, I don't know. So I know for a fact I did definitely try these. Definitely didn't work. I was very disappointed in myself. But in contrast, these SpongeBob Lights Camera Pans codes, yeah, those definitely worked. This is definitely a weird situation where the game itself had like that specific cheat codes menu where you could input cheat codes. Which just kind of felt like you were cheating, you know, like it just like, is this really cheating? I mean, it is, but it isn't. It's like if you were taking a test in school and the teacher just said, hey, here's the answer key. And I'm like, well, thanks, but I'm just a little confused right now. Yeah, there were only 3 cheat codes that you could input here, which makes me feel like this isn't all of them. Just unlock a game, unlock Silver Story Mode, and unlock all the action figures. You know, for featuring SpongeBob on the front cover, they really don't have like a ton of a ton of cheat codes for it. I mean, it's pretty much all just like on one just section of the page. I mean, they probably have like just as many, if not more, on like the PS2 side of things. Let me see. No, if anything, they have less. They don't even have Battle for Bikini Bottom here. They just have Lights, Camera, Pants, and the SpongeBob movie game. And that's it. And you know what's damn weird? They have far less cheat codes on the Xbox version of Battle for Bikini Bottom. Like, the amount of SpongeBob in this magazine wouldn't even fit on an entire page. They swindled me. Still looked through a lot of this, you know, even a lot of games like Smash Brothers Melee, even though I never had that as a kid. It was still kind of cool to just see like all this stuff that was in the game. I was like, my God, like I should get that game. I didn't. But yeah, the GameCube section was definitely a lot shorter than the others, which is understandable. I mean, like, this was 2006. The GameCube was really starting to wind down. So was the Xbox and kind of the PS2 to an extent. And when I say extent, I mean like, oh man, like when did that thing officially, like, go out? Like, 2014? It still had a decade left in it, but, like, I mean, how much of that was, like, genuine huge support? Like, it got a lot of licensed kids games. It got a lot of more budget releases, but, you know, like, whatever. You get what I mean. But we were in this weird era where, like, these consoles were starting to come to a halt, and the new consoles were just getting born here. Nintendo DS, that's it. Very interesting. I mean, by 2006, you'd assume we'd see far more games on the DS page, but to be fair, I mean, like, the DS was only around for, like, about a year and a half at most. Like, new Super Mario Brothers wasn't even here yet. You know, it's weird, they don't even show, like Mario Kart DS on here. No Mario Kart DS, but thank God they got Feel the Magic and the Rub Rabbits. I mean, Mario Kart DS, how hard would that be? You just, like, how to unlock character. There you go, that's it. There's enough secrets in that game, and they only have 2 pages worth. And guess what, PSP? Same fucking deal. Like I said, the PSP was still super cool back then. I don't think I ever actually asked for it because, like, I genuinely just didn't really know what I would actually play on it. I just always found it to be really cool. The fact that it's just like when I was looking through this magazine and seeing the cheat codes for GTA Liberty City Stories, I mean, like, that looks like a console game right there. And the fact that the games came in, like, taller plastic boxes, kind of more like the game consoles. I mean, like, yeah, DS games came in plastic case as well, which was damn cool. And I ended up choosing DS because I just knew of far more games on that platform that I was actively interested in. While the PSP, I just thought was, again, I just thought it was cool. And these days playing the PSP, I still think it's damn cool. Like, even when you play today, yeah, of course, you know, like, we've progressed so much. I mean, like, you can play so many, like, cutting edge games in the palm of your hand, but there's something about the PSP that still remains impressive. It just feels so premium even today. I love this little thing. I love this little thing too, the Game Boy Advance. Now, this was another platform I definitely got a bit out of in this magazine here. Yeah, out of all the games I had, the Yoshi's Island Super Mario Advance 3, I can play the game's mini battles at any moment by going to the stage select screen, holding select, and pressing LLBAR. You think I actually did that? It's all coming back to me. I didn't get much out of this section. I thought I did. I did not. That was the only game I owned right there that they have listed, Yoshi's Island, and there wasn't much else. But, you know, I got to see other games that you know, I didn't own. Oh, Nicktoons Racing. That's it's 2006, man. You're telling me you only have literally this many pages worth of Game Boy Advance cheat? I mean, it's the Game Boy Advance. It's nothing but cheat codes on that thing. Oh, well, we move over to PlayStation, and yeah, I remember out of all the PS1 games I owned, you know, like 3. Rascal, the demo for Rascal? Nope, not here. SpongeBob Super Sponge? Nope, same. Gran Turismo 2, Disc 1? Nada. Okay, well then we move over to the N64, which I always found to be a cool section here. The N64 always had, like, unique feel to it in this era. It always felt a little more, like, weirdly, this is gonna sound dumb, natural. The fact that it didn't use discs, but the games were, like, of this quality, you know, fully 3D. A lot of them had, you know, like, actual, you know, music and voice acting in them, all of that. You know, it was kind of hard for N64 games to have a lot of voice acting, but many of them still had it. The controller was so interesting looking. It just always kind of felt like a game system you could always rely on. How many N64s are actually gonna, you know, die on you? It was always just there at, like, my grandparents' house or my cousin's house or whatever. It was always all reliable. There was just something about it that seemed very classic, but not, because it was only like 5 years old at this point, at least, like, by the time it was over, you know, 2001. And it's just kind of cool. It was definitely cool to see some of these games here. Ooh, back issues, eh? It's interesting. You can kind of go back and order older issues if you'd like, which is a nice feature. Definitely didn't do that. I never owned the actual Tips and Tricks magazine. I did own other, Tips and Tricks code books throughout the years, which I do think was kind of dumb of me, because it's just like, you only really kind of needed this one, I guess. Like, how much was I really getting out of the other ones? But this one is cool because I can win the ultimate gaming rig. This is before the Wii and PS3 even released. I mean, these are like prototype designs of them. You have the boomerang controller for the PS3. You have like it's hard to see, but that is a beta Wii remote. I can kind of see like the differences in like the buttons and you know, the beta Wii remote had just the Nintendo logo at the bottom, not the Wii logo. But damn, look at that, over $20,000 in prizes. I just get $20,000. And on the back, welp, that was the Tips and Tricks 2006 video game code book. A lot of nostalgia in here, even though not much to get out of this, especially back then when I didn't have or know of many of these games. And there wasn't also much to gawk at, but I still made do. I still gawked. Oh, yes, I did. But you know, I definitely wish maybe I would have gotten like a different magazine instead. Could have been just the standard Tips and Tricks magazine instead of the go-to code book. But I don't know, I think I just knew that cheat code books seemed like a wise investment to make. I wanted to get the most out of my video games. I wanted to get infinite health and all that stuff in Frogger's Adventures on Game Boy Advance. And this book didn't give me that whatsoever. God damn it. Thankfully, in future code books that I own, these ones had a bit more to look at. For example, this one had a bit of a, you know, Grand Theft Auto 4 preview or strategy guide, and they also talked about Smash Brothers Brawl, which definitely gave me enough to look at. Just these pages here, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to magazines as kids. I mean, like, you can look at these 2 pages for hours and just find something new to just waste your time looking at when you're trying to just blow off a couple hours. But then after this, it still kind of went back to what you'd usually expect. What I got from the Sonic 15th anniversary code book. This one still had a bit more, as we can see. I mean, look at all this. Very cool. Select game previews, SOCOM, Street Fighter 4, We Cheer. Definitely very cool. Oh man, that game never came out. Gauntlet on DS. Pretty interesting. And then, oh man, Buzz Master Quiz? I remember seeing commercials for that all the time. And then I realized that like, you know, 90% of the Buzz games never came out here in North America. It's a Europe thing. But even though subsequent code books that I got were definitely a bit more elaborate, definitely more to look at, this one was always kind of like my go-to, just because it was the first one that I had, the one I could always rely on. When I'm in a pickle and I need to unlock all decks and minigames in Muppets Party Cruise, what the hell is this one gonna tell me how to do? Oh.